So there you have it, guys. It's a full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC 308. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button right now. Subscribe to the channel. I always give good breakdowns and predictions every UFC card. And if you want to go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru, you're going to be supporting the channel. You're going to get access to some great bets and some other content for other MMA promotions. And I really appreciate everyone that's over there helping support the channel. Keep it going and keep giving you guys these good predictions, breakdowns, and videos. And as far as my most confident pick on the card, I suppose I'll go with Farid Basharat. I don't have a great, one super confident pick on this card. I think there's some good value bets, but I'll go with Basharat, I suppose. I don't like the line at all, though. And for a parlay, I'll give you guys a parlay of Basharat and Fakhretdinov, but I think that the value is more on some of these big underdogs, man. Like, I think if you bet on Max, if you bet on Rakic, if you bet on Rebecki, maybe a couple other of these big underdogs, I think one of those are going to hit, and you'll probably have a good night, maybe even more than one will hit. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like I said, earlier in the video, we are going to be doing another stream tomorrow. We're going to be doing more of a betting perspective, so we'll give you guys some props, and we'll break down a little bit more betting angles for you guys, so come check it out, come talk. You can join the conversation and ask some questions to us, and yeah, man, besides that, stay tuned to the channel. I really appreciate you guys, and peace out. Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another breakdown and predictions video. We got UFC 308, phenomenal card, and I just want to say right off the bat, sorry for putting this out so late. I know this is super late video, so hopefully at least some of you guys are able to watch it. And going to be doing the live breakdown tomorrow on the channel again, so come check it out. We're going to have the same panel on for you guys. We're going to be answering your questions. We're going to be giving you guys more betting perspective, so come check that out and join the conversation. It's always fun to hear what you guys have to say with us. But yeah, man, hit the like button on this video, put a comment down below. I did this video earlier and I had to redo it. There was like major sound issues, so hopefully this one comes out better and sounds good for you guys, and I could put it up on the channel. So, but that's kind of the reason for the delay, but apologize for that. And check out Patreon. Go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. We won on I believe when it closed, it was like over plus 300, but I got it, I think, at like plus 215, so I got kind of a crap line. But JD Menezes, shout out to her. She won the Aries title today. We got that bet in and won our patrons some money on that, and we got some bets tomorrow, so check that out for LFA that I'm going to be putting out, and I'm going to be putting some bets for Saturday as well. So go over to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru, make yourself some money, and hit the like button on this video, put a comment down below, and let's get some interaction. I would really appreciate that. But first fight of the night, he knocked Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. Short notice fight. Pretty cool story here with Carlos Leal. He was going to fight on the UAE Warriors card, which was on Tuesday, I believe, of this week. And his opponent, or not his opponent, his teammate replaced him on the UAE Warriors card. Carlos was in his corner, and his teammate got a knockout win over the guy that Carlos was going to fight, who was a low-level guy. And so that was cool. Carlos Leal was in his corner, and his teammate won on like 48 hours notice. So Leal has some, good juju coming into this fight with his teammate winning, a guy that I believe is probably going to be in Carlos Leal's corner. So Leal has some good vibes entering this match, but he's taking on a really tough assignment for a UFC debut with Fakhretdinov. And Fakhretdinov kind of has to come in here and have a good performance, because even though he hasn't lost in the UFC, he had that draw, and then he had a very questionable win that most people, I believe, probably feel he lost to Nicholas Dalby. So if you compound both those fights back to back, I think Fakhretdinov lost a little bit of hype, and he needs to come in here and have a great performance for someone like Carlos Leal to regain that. And Carlos Leal is someone that's a difficult matchup because he doesn't have a name. This is his first fight in the UFC. He has fought in the PFL, and maybe some hardcores know him, but he's not a big-name fighter. But he's very good, and he's a difficult matchup for someone like Fakhretdinov, because he has really strong terms of physically, he's strong and physical. good takedown defense. He's not easy to control against the fence. And then on the feet, he has good cardio and good power striking, good pressure. I believe he's a black belt on the ground as well. But Leal will make some mistakes, like he'll pull guys on top of him in the clinch, trying to go for these bad takedowns and things like that. And on the feet, I think that Hinat is faster than him. Leal is powerful, and if it's a stand-up fight, it will be competitive. I think that the line is giving Carlos Leal respect for a reason, because Hinat isn't the best striker. But Hinat has decent enough boxing. I think he hits hard too, so he could rock Leal. And Leal was just getting ready to fight such a low-level opponent. Now he's getting a total switch up. He was fighting a guy that was more boxing-oriented. I just think it's probably not the fight that he's going to come in here and win versus Fakhretdinov. But if you look at it stylistically, I don't think Carlos Leal is the worst matchup in the world here for Hinat. It's a good short-notice opponent. But I think Leal will have some success in the promotion, but I don't think it's going to be on Saturday night. I think that Fakhretdinov probably going to get this win with this wrestling with some control, maybe mix in some takedowns, and pick up the victory. So Fakhretdinov is going to be the prediction for me. And second fight of the night here, we got Ismail Naurdiev making his return to the UFC, taking on Bruno Silva. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised to see Ismail Naurdiev back in the company. He didn't have the greatest run since leaving the UFC. He has fought some pretty solid competition, but he's taken some losses. And even in his last 4 fights, I believe he's 2-2 with 2 finished losses. And he's still skillful, and I think training with Killcliff and having a lot of connections has got him back in this position. And they're giving him Bruno Silva, who's a guy that's came over here and has fought already against Magomedov, had a fun performance. So I think that the fans obviously maybe wanted him back, and Bruno's obviously going to entertain. And he's not in a great position right now in terms of being able to say no. And he has to get this win here, and he's motivated to get this win. I think that he feels like he's been getting ripped off recently. You could argue that he beat Shara Bullet. And then his fight with Chris Weidman obviously was mired with controversy with the eye pokes and everything like that. It seems like that put a chip on Bruno's shoulder, and he needs that because Bruno, I believe, got a little bit checked out, and maybe not even checked out, but I think that he got to a point where he plateaued, and maybe this will give him that extra energy and momentum and kind of vigor to want to come in with a little bit of an improved skill set here. But style-wise, I mean, Naurdiev, a great pressure fighter. He likes to be in your face, but stay at the end of range. Look to pick and pull you with real nice straight punches, great speed, and he can mix in the takedown as well. He has real dynamic kicks. He'll rip the body, and he's a very good offensive fighter. I mean, the guy has blistering speed, he has power, he has good timing, he'll throw straight punches, he can mix in the kicks to all parts of the body, he has explosive, fast level changes, pretty good top game. So if you let him go first and you let him boss the fight and be the aggressor, Naurdiev is going to get off on you and probably finish you, but he's a little bit of kind of what's the right word? A glass cannon type of fighter where he's chinny. If you put him in a bad position, he can tend to quit and wilt. And Bruno is someone that's the exact opposite in terms of that, where he's a very strong-willed individual that you have to put on his deathbed to finish him, and he'll go to war and go out on his shield. And I think that he's a little bit mentally stronger, a little bit more of a powerful guy as well. If these guys brawl and Bruno connects on Ismail does not have a good chin, man. I mean, the guy is very, very chinny. If Bruno connects on him, he's going to go down. And I think Ismail's path to victory, if he's smart, is to wrestle here, mix in the takedowns and try to control Bruno on top, use that ground game, especially early on in the fight when Bruno's at his most dangerous. Because if these guys are just striking, man, I feel like Bruno is going to find that chin at one point and sit Naurdiev down and finish him in this fight. I know Bruno's been having a bad run recently, but he's been fighting guys that I think are a lot higher echelon than Ismail. And Ismail has had some questionable finish losses. I feel like Bruno is motivated here, and I'm kind of leaning towards Bruno Silva to get this win. I think that Bruno Silva can find the chin of Naurdiev and knock him out. So, what do you guys think about that? I mean, put it down in the comments. You think Bruno Silva can get this win? I know he just lost to Stone Age Chris Weidman, but hey, man, I'm rolling with him here. I think that he could beat Naurdiev, and I think he could finish him. And I think that this is a step down. I think Naurdiev is a little bit of a fraud, and I think Bruno's going to expose that. And this next fight, I'm kind of glad that I had to re-record this video and do it a little bit later, because there was a lot of weirdness that ended up happening with this matchup in particular, where now this fight is a 145-pound fight. It was going to be a bantamweight, and somehow these guys ended up agreeing to switch it to 45, and Farid weighed in at 137.5, whereas Victor was 145.5. So obviously we know who was the guy that asked for the fight to be up a weight, and Farid still accepting the fight even though he's down 8 pounds at the weigh-ins is, pretty gangster. But Victor's going to be huge in there, man, and I think that it kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you think about that. Like, is the Victor hurt? I mean, that's a crazy change in the weight, but obviously, I mean, it seems like the UFC was somewhat sympathetic because they allowed the division move. So maybe there was some reason why he missed this weight. And we saw Orolbai's fight get moved to 160 as well. So I don't know. There's some weirdness that's been going on here. This is weigh-ins, but as far as this matchup goes, I mean, I agree that Farid should be a fairly significant favorite. But Victor Hugo isn't a guy I'm trying to fade, man. And I don't know. I mean, the guy seems very, he has a very big danger factor. He's dynamic. He's huge for the weight. And obviously now that's even more pronounced. And on the feet, I mean, Farid has a lot more weapons. Obviously, Farid's like a single strike kind of guy. He usually is throwing a lot of kicks or, one punch done attacks. Whereas Hugo also is as well, but Hugo sometimes will come forward with more barrage and strikes together. But Hugo's throwing big hooks, he's throwing power, he's inactive, whereas Farid is throwing a lot of single strike kicks and staying high volume and throwing a lot of different weapons to all parts of the body. And then Farid mixes in a lot of takedowns. But Victor Hugo now being so big, is Farid going to be able to take him down and control him? I mean, Hugo's hard to control. He's hard to take down as it is. He's a very strong, physically built guy, and then he has decent grappling. You'll attack legs and things like that. Wrestling, I do think Farid's better, but now with the weight difference, there's going to be a big gap there. I just think skill-wise, there's a big advantage for Farid in terms of he's going to have a lot more weapons on the feet. He's going to be more active. He's going to be able to probably get the control time along the fence, maybe even mix in a takedown or two. But Hugo has that ability to get the knockout on the feet. He can get a club and sub. And now with the weight advantage, you could be hard to control and have more opportunities to find the finish. So Victor's a dynamic guy that I think could spoil the party with the finish and, lose a lot of people some money. So I'm kind of hesitant to go against him, especially with such a great record that he has. He has a lot of momentum. He's probably confident. He's on a win streak. But I think Farid should win and probably will win via decision. And Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira is up next. And skill for skill, I think Abus Magomedov has a big advantage here. I feel like he's the better striker technically by a pretty wide margin. And he's the better wrestler. And usually in a lot of Abus's fights, when you talk about him, you got to say that he's at a disadvantage in terms of cardio. But in this one, Abus is the only guy that we've seen go 15 minutes and get the victory. We've never seen Bruno even go 10 minutes in a fight. So therefore, you have to say that Abus Magomedov has the advantage in that area as well. But why this fight is tricky and why the line is close is because Bruno Ferreira has that ability to finish a fight with one shot, and we've seen him do it multiple times in the UFC, even in fights that he's been struggling in. He can close that distance very quick. He throws huge power shots, and if he touches your chin, he could put you to sleep. He also has decent judo, and he's just a very explosive fighter. He's someone that's low volume, and you could back him up, and you could land on him pretty easily, pretty frequently. You could even take him down, but he always has that nuclear option where he can take you out with one punch. But with Magomedov, he's a lot more technical striker. He has very nasty kicks. He stays long. He's going to pressure you and stay on you. He's going to have the reach advantage in this fight, and he theoretically should be able to stay safe while pressuring and be effective with that and have more volume. And he could even mix in the takedowns. But we have seen Abus Magomedov get clipped and get knocked out cold early in a fight against Luis Taylor. So Bruno Ferreira can close that distance, touch his chin. Hey, we could see Abus Magomedov go to sleep. And if Abus Magomedov gasses hard and we see two sloppy, gassed out fighters, you won't need as much to knock him out. And maybe Ferreira could find the knockout in that scenario as well. But ultimately, I think Abus Magomedov being better, in my opinion, in all areas, being the more technical striker, being able to maybe potentially mix in the wrestling if he has to, and having the more experience in pacing himself in longer fights, I think he's going to get the victory in this one. So I'm going to go with Abus Magomedov to get this win. But I think this is a tricky fight, and I think that Bruno Ferreira definitely is a live underdog, but I'm going to go with the Abus. And in this next one, I believe we have a catchweight fight now at 160 pounds. I think Orolbai was having some issues making the weight, so they allowed this 5-pound gap for them to make this fight 160. And this is another one, just like the Rakic fight, just like the Holloway fight, where I'm going to take a shot on the underdog here. I'm going with Mateusz Rebecki to get back on the right track and get this victory. I think people might be throwing dirt on Rebecki a little bit too quickly. His last fight with Carlos Diego Ferreira, he took a lot of damage. It was a bad one, man. I mean, it's one of those fights where he could come back here and not look the same, and that fight could have changed him as a fighter. But before that, he was on a long winning streak. He had some very impressive performances in the UFC, and he dominated the first round against CDF. He dropped him. He almost finished him. He was very dominant in that first round, but he got his eye swollen shut, or pretty much swollen shut, and he couldn't see at all, I don't believe. I think he kind of adrenaline dumped and just gassed out and didn't have much, and kind of Carlos Diego Ferreira in the second round kind of edged it, and then round 3 you could see Rebecki was worn down and couldn't really see, shot a bad takedown. Carlos got on top of him and ended it. So, I mean, Rebecki, hopefully his face isn't going to have, some reoccurring issues from that type of beating. I believe he got like a lot of facial fractures and some pretty bad issues. But when you're looking at this fight from a stylistic perspective, on the feet, it's going to be very competitive. Orolbai hits really hard like a truck, so I think that if he can connect on Rebecki, it could be bad news. But Rebecki hits hard too, man. I mean, the guy has hard kicks, which I think his leg kicks could be effective in this fight. And if he could pressure Orolbai, back him up, and get that hook game going that he has. Rebecki has pretty solid pressure boxing that he could have used to good effect against Orolbai. Orolbai throws nice 3-2s, and he has power. He's a little bit more static, and I don't think he's quite as fast, but when he throws, he's good at finding the chin, and he's sharp. So I think on the feet, it could favor Orolbai slightly, but I think that it's going to be, very close. In terms of wrestling, Orolbai's been dominant against certain guys, and I think that his wrestling is obviously really, really good. But when you watch one of his fights in the LFA where he's fighting a black belt, he didn't even attempt a takedown. He tried to keep it standing. And I could see him doing that in this fight because he's fighting a really credentialed high-level grappler in Mateusz Rebecki that's really good off his back with sweeps and nasty on top. And, maybe Orolbai doesn't want to contend with that grappling and tries to make it more of a stand-up fight. But another thing about it is Orolbai, we've seen him in his fight with Elvis Brenner. When Brenner went for a takedown, he took down Orolbai fairly easily, and Orolbai turtled and gave his back to stand up, and against Brenner didn't capitalize on it. But if he gives his back up to Rebecki is a guy that will make him pay for that, and seeing Brenner take down Orolbai like that kind of gives me a little bit of trepidation with Orolbai in this matchup. I mean, if he can get taken down by Elvis Brenner so easily, maybe Rebecki can go in there and use his leg kicks, use his pressure, mix in some takedowns, get into a dominant position or two, and really put the business on Orolbai. Maybe kind of expose his defensive grappling, even though everyone right now is ranting and raving about his offensive wrestling. We could see that he has a hole in his defensive wrestling, in his defensive grappling. And Mateusz Rebecki has beaten a lot of really good guys. He's beaten caucus fighters, and I think that people are kind of throwing dirt on Rebecki a little too early. The thing with Rebecki, to me, is just how is he going to come back from that fight? Is he going to be able to take a shot? Is he going to have the confidence? And then he's going to have to get past that reach and the straight shots. But I don't think Orolbai is just going to dominate him with the wrestling. And that's what Orolbai's main asset usually is in his fights. And if you take that away from him and you tell me that he's going to have to win in a stand-up battle and he's at that price tag, I'll take Rebecki in that situation. So give me Mateusz Rebecki to get this victory. And we got an intriguing fight here that's a little bit buried on this card. I don't see anyone talking about it. I don't think it's a very marquee fight on this fight card. But this could be a UFC Apex main event here. Two very recognizable names, a former UFC champion in RDA, and Jeff Neal, a guy that's coming off a split decision loss to someone that is in the title picture in Ian Gary. And RDA moving back up to welterweight. He had the kind of failed return to 155 where I believe he did get a win over Moicano or something like that. But I think it was at it wasn't even at 155 that fight. But then he lost to Fiziev and lost to Gamrot. So moving back up to 70s. And Jeff Neal is a guy that you'd have to think is a little bit hungrier and feels like he's a little bit more in the mix still, whereas RDA is just taking these fights to take these fights, and I don't know how much of Jeff Neal gets him up, but RDA will fight Francis Ngannou or anybody, and I feel like I've said that many times about RDA, but the guy just never says no to a fight. But two southpaws, I think that on the feet, it's going to be competitive, but Neal just being the younger guy, maybe having taken a little bit less damage, a little bit faster hands, a little bit more powerful, sharper, probably will be the slightly better striker. But I feel like Jeff Neal is going to take a page out of a lot of welterweights books and a lot of fighters books that we've seen with RDA, and that's mix in some clinch control, man. Put RDA on the cage, push him against the fence, use your size, hold him there. And RDA really struggles to get his back off the cage. If you put RDA on his back, he's usually staying there. And at 155, I think RDA's wrestling is a lot more serviceable. And I'm not saying he doesn't have good wrestling at 170 because he's proven that he could take guys down at 170 and finish them as well. But Jeff Neal has very good takedown defense. We've seen that even against the champ Belal Muhammad. He defended some really, really deep shots from Belal, and you could tell that the guy's just very athletic, really good takedown defense. And I believe that he's going to be able to defend the takedowns of RDA. And if RDA can get on top of Jeff Neal, I think that's his best path to victory. So if Jeff Neal could shut that down, I do think he's going to have a good chance to get this win here. Is he going to finish RDA? He could knock him out, but I don't think he will. I think RDA is too crafty, too sharp. He knows how to survive in there, and it's probably going to go the distance, and I'm going to say Jeff Neal gets his hand raised. And just before we get started on this fight, man, hit the like button on this video. Put a comment down below about the picks that I got so far, about some main card picks that you got. I want to hear what you guys have to say. And this is the second time I'm recording this video, like I said, so my bad for putting it out late. was going to put it out earlier in the day today, but for some reason the audio was real wonky on the original video. Didn't want to put that out for you guys, but yeah, man. Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira, and this fight got moved up, I believe, from the first fight of the night to this feature prelim, so they're putting a lot of confidence on these two boys, and they think they're going to throw down and deliver, and I don't see why not. Two fairly inexperienced guys when you talk about fighting higher level opponents. Ibo Aslan, he's had one fight in the UFC, and it was against kind of a jobber, that Anton Turkali, who he did avenge his loss against. Anton was the guy that he did lose to, and he was able to come back, get the win over Anton, and it was a competitive fight, but Ibo prevailed there, and he's taking on an undefeated Brazilian who's coming out of the same training camp as Jailton Almeida, but at least in the small amount of footage that I could find of his, definitely more of a stand-up fighter, but you'd have to think that he has that grappling in his back pocket as well, and I'm not too sure what to think about this one. I mean, it's obviously two heavy-handed guys with knockout power. I feel like Ibo Aslan, he's a little bit stiffer. He's not necessarily as fast and fluid. If he lands and connects, he can put your lights out, and he has fairly technical kicks. He'll throw hard calf kicks, and he'll throw some big overhands. But I feel like Rafael, from what I've seen, he's pretty dynamic for a big guy. I mean, you see him set up nice spinning attacks. He has good kicks to all parts of the body, fast punches. I feel like he's going to be able to potentially mix it up. And in terms of composure, I got to say, Rafael looks a little bit more composed, like he paces himself slightly better. And Ibo Aslan does have a tendency to slow down pretty majorly. Ibo does have the advantage of the UFC experience. He might have fought better opponents overall, even though I think it's debatable. I mean, neither guy has really fought great guys. I'm going to go with Rafael to get the knockout in this one. I think it's kind of a crapshoot. I don't think anyone could be super confident in their prediction on this one. But I'm going to go with the UFC newcomer because I believe he's a little bit sharper, a little bit faster, a little bit more dynamic, and a little bit more composed. And this next one, we got another great fight, striking fight. Shara Magomedov taking on Armen Petrosyan. And I was kind of hard on Shara Bullet before his last fight with Michal Oleksiejczuk. And I was thinking that his boxing maybe wasn't going to be up to par. And honestly, that was a great fight. I mean, Michal dropped Shara in the first round. I think he won one round, and it was competitive. But Shara proved to me in that one that he's better than I gave him credit for in terms of his conditioning. I definitely thought he was going to slow down, but his output in round 3 and just throughout the entire fight was pretty phenomenal. I mean, the guy has insane cardio to throw that many kicks moving backwards over 3 rounds that he does. But he's going to be fighting, in my opinion, the best striker that he's fought in the UFC with Armen Petrosyan in front of him. And it's going to be a stand-up fight, though, which is obviously what Magomedov wants and honestly what Petrosyan wants. But I see, like at the press conference today, they were asking, is Petrosyan going to take him down? I don't think he's going to take him down unless he catches a kick or something like that, because Armen doesn't have wrestling ability. I mean, his wrestling defense is even kind of suspect. Obviously, we saw Rodolfo Vieira run through him in his last fight. So I think it's going to be a stand-up fight. And we got a boxer with hard leg. Like, I think Armen has a more boxing style, even though he does come with the body kicks and some leg kicks as well. But he's a lot more boxing-oriented to me. He throws good straight punches and is fairly economical, but he's fast, and when he lets go with his hands, he'll throw sharp straight shots down the middle. He's good at kind of catching the jab, parrying shots, and then returning with counters, and he will mix in those calf kicks and body kicks as well. He's not the most powerful guy, but he can throw high volume, and he's pretty high, good in terms of conditioning. His defensive grappling is on point. He has a good chin. Haven't seen him fight a lot of elite kickers, and I think that Magomedov at range is going to be a little bit more active. I mean, the guy just has so many weapons that he could throw out at you, and with Petrosyan, he's going to be on the gas looking to land long punches, but I just feel like Shara might be outpointing him slightly, and there's going to be no takedown threat for either guy here. Shara, I think, is better when he fights southpaw opponents, but he could switch stance and throw kicks from both stances very fluidly, so I think he has no problem going orthodox, ripping up the legs of Petrosyan, and just being a little sharper and more of a venomous striker. I think that if the fight's close, like we saw with the Bruno Silva versus Arman fight, they might just give it to Shara again because he has that marketability in the area. And this is a tough one for me. I mean, I don't have a great read on this one, so I might not be giving you guys the greatest breakdown in the world. I want your guys' opinion on this one. So in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this fight? You got Shara Bullet, you got Arman. Why, and are you confident? Because to me, this is one of my iffier spots on the card, but I'm going to go with Shara Bullet by decision. And this next fight, don't got a lot to say about this one because I think the line's a little wide, but ultimately I don't really have any interest in betting Ige here. I think Lerone is the pick, but he's like over minus 300 at this point. He's been bet up quite a bit. He's taken a lot of money, and I just feel like Ige, he's dangerous. He has that switch stance, crosses, overhands that he throws. He'll throw the big power hooks with both hands, but Lerone is going to be a lot slicker, a lot faster. I feel like he's going to be able to hit and not get hit, be kind of very hard to pin down for Ige. If Ige can't touch that chin, I mean, Murphy's been dropped quite a few times in the UFC, man. I mean, his chin isn't necessarily Teflon. I think that Dan Ige is someone that hits like a truck, that's gotten some of the most brutal knockouts that we've seen at featherweight. Could get Murphy out of there, but ultimately, Ige usually knocks out guys that aren't great strikers or that are on their way out a little bit, and I just don't think Lerone Murphy's in that category. And I think Lerone Murphy honestly could even mix this up and get a takedown or two, surprise Ige a little bit, put him on his back, maybe hold him down for a round, and maybe, win the first and have a close competitive second where Ige is kind of getting a little bit back into it, and then surprise him, get a takedown in the third, blanket him, and get the decision win or something like that. But I think Murphy's going to find a way to get this one done either way. I do kind of like it going to decision. I don't think that Murphy has a huge finishing upside. I mean, obviously he has power. Both these guys could knock each other out. I think Ige is a little bit more knockout threat, but I think that the most likely scenario is Lerone Murphy winning a decision. And we got a sick matchup in this next fight. Magomedov Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. And first off, I got to say, I don't understand the line on this fight. I get that Ankalaev's on a long winning streak. Rakic hasn't won in a while. He has the 2 losses in a row. But I feel like both these guys are kind of similar. I think that they're two of the best guys in the world, obviously. But when you look at how they fight, they're economical, technical. They both kind of got in bad raps for being a little bit boring. But I feel they both try to stay kind of safe but sharp and kind of fight smart on the feet. And then they can mix in takedowns and, bring the fight to the ground and things like that. But they more like to keep it standing. So it's, to me, going to be a slow-paced striking match where they're going to both be kind of touching each other up from range. And I think it's going to come down to if Rakic can get those leg kicks going on Ankalaev, or Ankalaev can close the distance and use his pressure and kind of be able to get into that range where, Ankalaev is able to force more exchanges. I feel like Rakic at distance is going to be very competitive because he's going to have the length advantage. Both these guys are really fast, and they like to play that kind of, they'll throw feints at you or they'll throw the jab, and then when you react, they're going to be ready to slip and rip with multiple punches. And I think that Rakic is a little bit better with throwing combinations. Magomed sometimes he'll just get very lead hand happy and throw that the jab or the lead hook counter a lot, and then a lot of kicks. He has a really nice head kick, and I think that head kick is going to be theoretically potentially there for Ankalaev to land. But if they're more at distance and Rakic can get those leg kicks on Ankalaev, we've seen Ankalaev really struggle with leg kicks, and Rakic has nasty low kicks, man. I mean, he was chewing up Yuri with the leg kicks before Yuri went Yuri mode. I mean, that's all I could say. It just kind of dark red and just took out Rakic. But I don't think Ankalaev has that. Even though he's a better fighter than Yuri, I don't think he has that kill switch mode that Yuri has. If Rakic gets in on and starts beating up his legs, I don't think Ankalaev is going to be able to turn the trigger and start to track down Rakic, put himself in harm's way. To me, he's just not that type of fighter. And I think that Ankalaev isn't going to get the takedowns, man. I mean, some people are assuming they can bring this fight to the mat, but Rakic, I don't believe he's ever been taken down before. If he has, I can't even remember, and I don't think he's ever been controlled. So I feel like it's going to be more of a stand-up fight. I mean, you look at Ankalaev when he fought Jan Blachowicz, he was 0 for 6 to start off with the takedowns. He didn't get takedowns on Blachowicz till Blachowicz really started to get tired in the championship rounds. This is only a 3-round fight. I'm really kind of struggling with this one. And with the lineman, I'm going to go with Rakic. I just feel like on the feet, it's going to be lower volume. But I think Rakic, if he can keep it at range, is going to be able to match or maybe even land a little bit more. And I think that the leg kicks could be a pretty significant factor. And unless Ankalaev changes up his style and is a lot more aggressive where he's backing up Rakic towards the cage and trying to create more exchanges, which is what I think he should do, I don't know how he's going to differentiate himself in the fight enough to be that significant of a favorite. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I don't think that he's going to be able to win by clinching Rakic against the fence. Rakic is very good in that element as well. I think that Rakic will be able to deny the takedowns, make it more of a stand-up battle. And at that point, I kind of think it's maybe like 55-45 Ankalaev. So if this was a pick'em, I would go with Ankalaev, but I think Rakic has more than a good chance to win this one. So I'm going to go with the Rakic here to get the upset. Rakic is fighting for his career here to me, man. 2 losses in a row, and they're giving him a gift. They're giving him a chance to get right back in the mix. So I'm going to go with Rakic here. And in the co-main event, we got an amazing fight that we had to wait a little bit for, but it's finally here. Robert the Reaper Whittaker taking on Khamzat Chimaev. And, man, it's difficult to get Khamzat Chimaev in the cage, so whenever we do, it's definitely a luxury because the guy came out like a ball of fire and was fighting extremely often, but recently, man, he just has had a lot of issues, it seems like, outside the cage. Some unfortunate life events, obviously. I think now he's having to go through his son, having some health issues, so hopefully everything goes good with that. But he's had some personal problems as well on the health side, and I believe he's had some visa problems as well. So hopefully eventually Chimaev can get that all straightened out. But until then, we're probably going to have to keep seeing him fight over in the Middle East and things like that. But as long as guys are willing to accept the fight, badasses like Robert Whittaker in that territory, we're going to continue to not have much of a problem giving Chimaev these high-level matchups. I mean, right here, he's taking on one of the best middleweights ever, a former champion, and this is definitely by far the best middleweight that Chimaev has ever faced. Obviously, he fought GM3, who's pretty solid, and he had a win over Kamaru Usman at middleweight, another champion. So this would be the second champion in a row that Chimaev is able to dispatch if he does get this victory here. But I think this is definitely the toughest test. Even though he fought Usman, Whittaker's a big middleweight, and Whittaker's someone that I think is more skilled overall. So it's a hell of a challenge. I mean, with Khamzat Chimaev, I think that we don't really know exactly how he's going to look here because I do believe that he's went back to his old wrestling coach and has taken a different approach in terms of his training camp and his style for this fight. I believe maybe not his style. I don't know how he's actually going to compete, but I believe that he has dialed down the crazy training and tried to hone in terms of finding that good balance of training hard but also resting and being able to be active and show your best on fight night. And I also believe that he's kind of tried to work a little bit, he said, on pacing himself. So we could see him maybe being a little bit more patient in fights in this one. But we'll see exactly how it goes on fight night. But with Robert Whittaker, he usually fights the same in every one of his matches, and we've seen him fight for years. So we know what we're going to get out of the Reaper, and he's not going to be scared to fight a guy like Chimaev. One thing with Chimaev is he does have that aura where plenty of fighters probably were defeated before they even got in the cage with him. Robert Whittaker is not going to be one of those guys. Chimaev is going to go out there and have to defeat him skill for skill. So it's going to be a hell of a matchup here. And when you're looking at these guys on the feed, I mean, I think obviously you're going to have to give a major edge overall to Robert Whittaker. I think Chimaev is an underrated striker. I believe he has a really nice jab. He's fairly fluid, actually. He'll switch stances. His boxing isn't terrible, and he has some decent timing. Like, he'll catch guys coming in with check hooks. I've seen him land a nice counter elbow in his last fight. He's not really a big kicker. He will throw some body kicks, some head kicks, but obviously I think Whittaker is the way more dynamic kicker. And one thing with Chimaev is he is very heavy on his lead leg, which obviously gives him the ability to level change quickly and use his boxing, which is predominantly what he uses on the feet. But I think Whittaker is going to be throwing a lot of low kicks, and we're going to see how Chimaev is going to have to deal with that, or how he's going to look to counter that. But, yeah, man, I mean, I think Chimaev, this is a hard matchup because you got a guy in Whittaker that's been notorious for being difficult to take down. So Chimaev is going to have to time those entries of Whittaker. Whittaker likes to, explode in with the jab or explode in with the combination. And if you can time that and level change right on the combination, or right when Whittaker is trying to explode in, you could take him down. You can maybe counter him with a big rear cross, a big check hook elbow, or jab even, and maybe rock him. We know Whittaker, his chin is good, but he can be hurt, and he is susceptible to being knocked out or dropped and put in some bad positions. So I don't think it's out of the realm possibility that Chimaev could get a knockout in this fight. But on the feet overall, I think that obviously Whittaker is going to have a big advantage. He's going to be able to land the jab. I think he's going to land those straight shots. Chimaev isn't the best with his head movement or that slick of a striker, really. I think that Whittaker's faster as well. So if they're just standing up striking and Chimaev can't really get the beat on the takedowns or the timing, it could end up being a really long night for Chimaev because I think Whittaker definitely holds the advantage in the stand-up. But if Chimaev can time one of those takedowns in the open mat, I do believe that Whittaker will expose his back. And if Whittaker exposes his back and Chimaev can secure that position and do some real damage or potentially even get the finish, we could see a obviously finished victory for Chimaev or a diminished Whittaker for the rest of the fight after Chimaev kind of beats him down in that position. So I believe that that's going to be kind of the factor in the fight. If Chimaev can time the takedowns or time some counter damaging punches or elbows or whatever off the blitzes of Whittaker, or if Whittaker can kind of just keep him at bay and negate the takedowns and just outstrike him on the feet. I kind of think that the cardio concerns for Chimaev, obviously they're there because of the pacing issue, but he's in phenomenal shape. I mean, they say the guy's like training like crazy. He has a lot of crazy gym stories where he was just ragdolling guys for hours in the gym. So obviously he has the cardio. It's just the pacing that he has to figure out, and it seems like he's maybe put an emphasis on that. But we're gonna have to see exactly how Chimaev looks. It's been a while since he's been in there, and this is gonna be a really good opponent that he's gonna be going in there against. So Whittaker, you could never count him out of a fight against anybody. But I'm just going to go with the new generation. I just think Chimaev is going to be able to maybe time that takedown, take the back, and get a sub or get a ground and pound finish. But I think that the line could be a little bit closer. And I don't really begrudge anyone going with Whittaker. But I'm going to go with Chimaev. And finally, we got the main event. We got arguably the best fight the UFC could put on today. We got the champ, Ilia Topuria, taking on the former champion and the current BMF title holder, Max Holloway. And this is a clash of eras. This is Ilia Topuria, the new breed, just knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. And Max Holloway, a guy that has been in the UFC for over a decade, someone that, if he does reclaim his belt, will be the longest time in between title reigns for a male champion in history. I think it'll be the second longest ever behind Carla Esparza. And it would be a really phenomenal feat for Max Holloway, especially beating a guy like Ilia Topuria that arguably, if he can get the win over Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway back-to-back, a few more wins after that, and he could very well be the best featherweight of all time. So this fight has a lot of implications, obviously, with the title being on the line, but there's even more than that. If Max wins this, I think he puts himself firmly back in the argument for the best featherweight ever, because obviously he got kind of knocked off the pedestal a bit with the losses to Volkanovski. But if he can get this win over a fighter that Volkanovski lost to and someone that is at the caliber of Ilia, then, man, that's just a gigantic win for his resume, especially with what he just recently did, getting the win over Justin Gaethje. So it's just an awesome fight all around. And obviously for Ilia, he's getting another all-time champ under his ledger if he can get the job done here. And I just can't wait for this fight. I think stylistically, this is by far the hardest fight for Ilia around the top of the division. And I think Max Holloway is going to have one of the best chances to defeat him when you're looking at future kind of title challengers that I see at featherweight. And if Ilia can go out here and make this one look easy versus Max Holloway, I think we could be seeing a dominant champion on our hands. But when you look at these guys from a stylistic perspective, obviously both have kind of made their names and made their calling card on their boxing, and they both claim to be the best boxers in the UFC. But I think if we're talking straight up hands, straight up boxing, I think Ilia has the edge there. So Max is going to have to fight smart. And I think a lot of the mind games this week is coming down to how these guys want to fight each other tactically. And I kind of like how Max Holloway is kind of giving Ilia the cold shoulder, and he's not engaging as much in the trash talk. He's not getting very emotional. Ilia saying he's going to point down to the center of the cage and try to get him to exchange right away, which that would be extremely advantageous for Ilia. And I think Max is going to be cool, calm, and collected, mobile, and do what he has to do, hopefully, to get this victory. Because if you go back, you look at some of Max's fights, for instance, like when he fought Alex Volkanovski the third time, there was a lot of animus there, I think, and I think Max was really pressing, and he was staying in Volk's face and trying to make it more of a pocket war. And if he does that versus Ilia, he's going to be in big trouble. I do think Ilia could maybe even come through on his promise to become the first man to knock out Max Holloway if he comes with that game plan. Max has a great style to beat Ilia, but it's all going to be dependent on him being mobile, never being stationary, always trying to move around and not let Ilia in the pocket, landing these hard power combinations. Because if Max Holloway and Ilia are just standing in front of each other brawling, Ilia just has such a big power advantage. I feel like he has smoother hands, he has faster hands, and he's sharper. So I just feel like he has better tools everywhere in that area. At distance, though, Max, even though they have the same arm reach, obviously. Max is going to be 5 inches taller. And we've seen Ilya in previous fights struggle to close the distance against longer guys. For instance, in his fight with Jai Herbert, he was really struggling to get past Jai Herbert's weapons. He got dropped. And if Max Holloway can keep him at the end of his jab, if he could stay long, if he could throw calf kicks, high volume, move around, never stay in front of Topuria, always be on your bike, keeping your feet moving, and trying to throw a lot of volume and eventually overwhelm Ilya, I think you have a great chance to win, because Ilya does have some elements that he could bring in from distance, such as the calf kicks, but I think that Max can throw calf kicks of his own, and it's going to kind of come down to who gets off first with the leg kicks in that type of scenario. But Ilya could mix it up and shoot doubles to try to close the distance and maybe get Max tired and then strike more after he kind of wears him down a little bit, so Max isn't as mobile. But I don't know. I just don't know if Ilya is going to be successful with the wrestling, with the grappling on Max. And I think that when they're at range, Max with that reach advantage, throwing straight punches down the middle, staying high volume. You watch Max fight certain guys, he's really good at rolling with shots, kind of taking power off. And you see Ilya all the time. He's just trying to come with that power overhand, the power check hook counters. And if Max can kind of roll with those shots or never be there for those shots, always stay moving, no lazy jabs or really can come over the top and tag you up, then I think you're going to have a great chance of seeing Max Holloway becoming the champion here. But I do think, though, that Max Holloway, if he eats some of these big power shots from a guy like Ilya, even though he has arguably the greatest chin in UFC history, you don't want to be taking those punches by Ilya. And I don't know too many guys that are going to be able to eat those shots and still be standing, even someone like Max Holloway. So Max just has to be steady moving this whole fight. I think for Ilya, if Ilya wants to have success, he's going to have to chop the legs early and try to get Max to be more stationary. And the more that him and Max are in boxing, brawling range, and Max isn't at the end of range, kind of slipping and coming back with combinations and staying long, I think he's going to be winning. So if Ilya can use the calf kick to slow Max down and then get him to stand in front of him and exchange, and I think Ilya is going to get the victory. And I think Ilya is obviously trying to bait Max into that type of style, talking about he's going to point down to the ground, and Max, he wants them to stand right in front of each other and just throw down for the fans, because Ilya has to know as well that his biggest difficulty in the fight is going to be navigating that distance disadvantage. So I think this is a phenomenal matchup, and I'm just not ready to throw dirt on Max yet, man. I think Max has the best style to beat a fighter like Ilya, and I think that if he comes in here on point, he is able to make the weight safely, which that's one thing that is kind of giving me a little bit of concern, because we did see Max Holloway put on some weight, put on some muscle, gain some size to move to 155. Now he's having to drop some of that muscle, come back down to 145, which was already a difficult weight cut for him in the past. So hopefully he has a safe weight cut and everything goes well in terms of that. But if it does, I just feel like Max still has enough left. We saw in his fight with Justin Gaethje, he was fighting a guy that had similar weapons, overhands, big leg kicks. Obviously, I think Ilya is a lot more sharp and technical than Gaethje, but, I just think Max can navigate this fight and fight smart. If he gets cocky, or he gets too emotional and stands in front of Ilya and throws down, then man, he could get knocked out. But I think the veteran is going to fight smart. I think he's going to know that this is going to be his last opportunity to get this featherweight title back. And I think he's going to do it, man. So I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to go with Max Holloway to hand Ilya Topuria his first defeat in MMA, regain his title, and we'll see what happens next for this featherweight weight class.